Live from Texas, this is the Will Kane Show. We have a tragic story for you today out of South Carolina. Police are charging an illegal immigrant in the hit-and-run death of a 21-year-old University of South Carolina student, Nathaniel Baker. Now, the fatal crash happening on campus Wednesday when the driver of a truck tried to go through an intersection. He failed to yield while making a left, hitting and killing Baker, who was on a motorcycle. The driver, 24-year-old Rosali Fernandez Cruz, tried to flee, getting out of his truck, ran away before being grabbed by police. Here's the thing, this wasn't his first arrest. Fernandez Cruz was arrested by Border Patrol in Texas in order to appear in 2016. He never appeared. 2 years later, he was ordered to be deported. He never was deported. This never should have happened. So why did it? That's a good transition into what's actually happening on America's roads. It's becoming a highway to hell. I keep hearing stories from friends, family members, sometimes out of West Texas, about the difficulty on American roads, the fear of putting your teenager in a reckless situation where more and more it seems like semi-trucks, 8-wheelers, 18-wheelers are a risk to your life. And there are stories that back up this feeling. Last year, an illegal immigrant who had been deported 16 times lost control of his semi-truck, killing American Scott Miller in Colorado. Just last month, 5 people were killed in Austin after a man from Ethiopia who was in the United States on a work visa smashed his semi-truck into stopped traffic. That brings us to a Will Kane investigation. Over the last 3 years, the American trucking industry has been shot into a recession. Yet the number of people with commercial driver's license soars. State by state, the statistics are eye-popping. Since 2019, right here in Texas, the average number of CDL licenses issued has been risen by 46,000. Who are these drivers? What's going on? We talked to industry leaders who say they had a mass influx of foreign-born drivers, some illegal immigrants. Why? Because we lowered our standards. Here's how and when we lowered those standards. In 2016, the Obama administration stopped enforcing the English requirement for CDL drivers. So you have drivers on the road who can't read road signs. This forced as well mass layoffs, yet the Biden-Harris action plan sought to bring in more truckers on the road. And they expanded their job search to refugees. Now, Arkansas is one of the few states who are working on legislation to push back on this and criminalize non-citizen drivers. But is it enough? Joining me now, American Truckers United co-founders Harvey Beach and Shannon Everett. Thank you both for being with me today, Harvey and Shannon. Let's start with what's happened to your industry over the last several years. It looks like you had 2 things happen at the same time. A lowering of standards, including, shockingly somehow, no English proficiency to get on American roads, and simultaneously an influx of new drivers, Harvey.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Will, thank you so much for having us on today. We have tried to get this message out over the last several months, so we really appreciate you having us on here today. But where this current nightmare on our roads and chaos in our industry really took to a whole other level is when the American Trucking Association advised our federal government that it was okay to give non-domiciled CDLs to unvetted non-citizens from all over the third world, many of which cannot read, speak, or understand English, and many of which came from countries where, they had never drove a car. And they were brought over here and ill-trained and thrown into these big rigs and turned loose on our roadways.
And Shannon, I want to talk more about what that means for our roadways. I want to talk about the danger as we've led into this conversation today. But it also has been devastating, as I understand, for your industry. I mean, you've been in a 3 or 4 year recession here in trucking.
Yeah, we've actually been in the longest trucking downturn that I've ever experienced. I've been in the industry for 25 years, and this actually hits really close to home for me. This mission that we're on really started when I laid off 450 drivers in 2019, when we lost contracts to competition that was utilizing foreign commercial driver's licenses. I tried back then to take this issue on a federal level with our federal legislators, and our Arkansas Trucking Association wouldn't support those efforts. because at the time they said, it was limited to just the NAFTA trade lanes. And so I put that matter down, and in 2024, we saw the crash that you described a while ago, the crash of Scott Miller, where the driver had been deported so many times and he was allowed back in, and every time he was allowed back in, he got another commercial driver's license, and he wasn't properly vetted. And so Harvey and I saw that crash, and it really tugged at our heart, and we said, you know what, we have the experience in the industry. We know the loopholes these guys are using to get on our highways. We know the loopholes that our government is leaving open that allows these guys on the highways. Let's get hold of these families and let's unite not only these crash victim families, but let's pull the American truck driver community together and start speaking up about the matter of labor dumping and unregulated immigration in the trucking industry. And that's why we're here today, is we're trying to represent that voice.
And as far as the industry is concerned, I know you guys believe this to be true. There's two ecosystems within the trucking industry. There's American-made, American truck drivers. You get $75,000 on average in salary and benefits, healthcare, Social Security. And drivers have somewhere to go home to after they do their long-haul runs. Foreign-made, on the other hand, is foreign-born drivers, some illegal. Over 50% don't speak English. Many live in their truck, so there's no need for benefits, healthcare, lower standard of cost of living. Help me understand this English proficiency issue here, Harvey. It just seems totally counterintuitive. Like, why would we be putting commercial driver's license, driving these massive machines on our highway, if they can't read the road signs?
Yes, sir. And that is something that to date, no one can argue that it is a major safety hazard if we have someone in a commercial vehicle that cannot read right lane ends 1,000 feet, bridge may ice in cold weather. Recently in Austin, Texas, the gentleman that drove into a work zone with completely stalled traffic, you can only wonder how many warning signs did he go by? So the results that have been caused by this Biden trucking action plan that flooded so many of these unvetted folks into our industry, and will a non-domiciled CDL, the lack of vetting is so atrocious in that process that a non-domiciled CDL cannot be used to board an airplane in our country. And what we've seen in the industry is we've seen, like you mentioned, the two ecosystems. We've seen our American legacy carriers. We're safer than we've ever been before. We're running one e-log book. Our drivers are part of a drug testing clearinghouse today. We've invested in the safety mitigation technologies on the front and the sides of our trucks. We have cameras that allow us to coach our drivers in real time today. But what we've seen is a drastic increase in fatality and injury accidents by a group of trucking operators from foreign lands that have no regard for our regulation. And we have people in foreign countries regularly tampering with electronic logbooks for their drivers in our homeland, forcing them to drive fatigued. So the accidents and the fatalities, they've just reached a level that we've never seen before.
All right, I've got to leave it here. I'm going to give you one quick minute here, Shannon, because I do want you to address what might be a counter argument. We needed increased number of truckers during COVID. Everybody was shipping something to their home. You're a proud and long industry, but this consumer wants cheap products delivered to their door. So this influx of drivers destroys your industry. What do you say to the consumers that want low shipping rates?
The cost of reducing our standards is too high. The cost that comes from the increased national security risk, the cost that comes from the increased public safety risk is not worth cheap goods. And so I would argue that we need a safer industry. We need to maintain our standards. We need to increase our standards so that we're not worried about who our kids are driving next to on these highways, who our families are around on these highways. One of the things that a driver brought up to me just this week was like, look, the industry, we used to look out for each other. We used to talk on CB radios, and like the crash in Austin, Texas, we would warn one another, hey, there's a crash up ahead, slow down. Nobody's using CB radios anymore because not everybody speaks English. And so we hear a common complaint from the guys that nobody's even warning each other anymore. So I would say that national security and public safety come over economics.
I just can't imagine putting someone on the road that can neither speak nor read the language, and why we would institutionalize that and letting someone get a commercial driver's license without meeting those standards. All right, Shannon and Harvey, thank you so much for being part of this deep dive into what's happening in the trucking industry.